Hi everyone again. Hope you are all keeping well, and I'm back for another video. Something that I thought of the other day, it was just on my mind, um, and I like to do these videos kind of before I forget. I think it's quite significant. I was thinking about Jesus as a character. Now, like whether or not he was real or not, I'm not really worried about that. Some people say that he was a real man that existed roughly at the same time, but that wasn't his name. And later on they replaced, his real name with Jesus. Don't know. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter that if there was a person at that time called Jesus. It's just there. If you go back in time, there were probably many. There were many Jesuses in different cultures with different names. I'm talking not in a religious um, aspect. I'm really referring to the character and what he stood for and what he was actually trying to achieve. So, and how if he was successful, his successes, but also some of his failures, and how would he do it again differently if he kind of came back in time or had a chance to do it all over again, and also how would he um, do things differently now in a modern world? Um, how would he approach it, and would he be able to achieve more in a modern world? And I was just thinking because I look at his successes, I'm thinking the character and failures, because the character, what he did was he really was a revolutionary when you look at it. Um, so keep this in mind. Okay, religious um, beliefs aside, let's just put that aside. Um, so whether you're Christian or not, I don't know, but if you're part of the tribe, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So let's just say he's not the son of God in the traditional religious sense, okay? But what he did was I think he was a revolutionary. I think he was like us in the fact that he wanted to change things for the better, or he saw that he certainly saw there was something wrong with the world that didn't sit with him, and he thought that there needs to be something done to combat the what he felt was the evil in the world. And at the time, I guess it was the Roman Empire, if I'm correct. But I mean, let's think of Sermon on the Mount, if that's what it was called in the Bible, where he really just put himself on public display and just kind of just started speaking in public. He didn't care. He actually risked and put himself out there. Um, and what happened really, when you look at it, is he did have a group of followers that liked him and, let's say, really understood where he was coming from. So he was a success in that way. He did touch the lives, because even if you touch the lives of a few people and they understand your philosophical message and they can feel your benevolence and everything, you've helped them. So, but when you look at the story, he was also one. He was up against the powers at the time that be, the Roman Empire or whatever, and he was really possibly also up against the same uh, situation now. He was up against the normies and possibly the NPCs if there were any in those days. I mean, we don't know, but they probably could have been. Maybe there were just as many now. I don't know. Or with the percentage of the population, being lower, they could have still been plenty of NPCs and certainly normies that didn't understand his message. Um, and so, one way of seeing it is what could have happened to him is the powers they gave fake news, or sorry, fake information about him. They built up a fake um, kind of um, character. Like they led the normies to believe that he was something else. They didn't, if they didn't understand him anyway. what they may have done was twisted his words and turned the people against him by building up a fake kind of profile of what Jesus was when he wasn't. So, for example, the obvious one, maybe when he was saying, I'm the Son of God, he could have originally said, we're all sons of God. Everyone was equal, including him. What did Son of God mean? Like, I don't know, it's just one way of looking at it. You've got God and devil, good and bad, maybe, so you could be sons of good. He just, because he wanted people to love one another, didn't he? He said, we can be better, we can rise above these low base instincts, and we can, think with our hearts and learn to love one another. So maybe that, that was really one of his messages, as far as I'm concerned, from what parts of the New Testament I've read. But the powers twisted it and, said, maybe they said, he's a son of God, meaning he is high almighty, he's almost supernatural, he's something that he isn't, he's a fake, you can't listen to him. Maybe that's what they did. And they wanted to. I've just thought about this actually, just right now. I've got the box set of Kung Fu, the 1970s one, with David. Can't remember his surname, Carradine or whatever. The wandering Shaolin monk, that kind of. There's just wanders around and gets into fights, but he's every episode there's a big philosophical message. There's something to learn. They're really good. If you can get them, it's worth it on a box set. But there's one where there's this there's this character who's a big kind of like a bodyguard for the this Chinese kind of I don't know what they mafia at the time. And this guy is trying hired to kill David Carradine, whatever his name. What was the character's name? I don't think he had a name, but he was ordered to kill him because he was a threat. Because what he was doing was he was preaching his own philosophy, and it was a threat to the powers. You see, you had a situation where you in America, and in this one of these episodes, you had the Chinese mafia there, and they set up camp, and they had slaves and prostitutes and stuff like that. They had a little boy, a Chinese boy, who was a slave, and he didn't like the way he was being treated because they would beat him and make him work hard and never got any rest. And then there was another group of a lady who was a Christian lady, and she was very she was kind-hearted, but she was very radical in her own way. And what she was doing was trying to save the Chinese because they weren't, and the Chinese mafia because they weren't Christian. It's very dangerous grounds. And what she did was she was very kind. The boy ran off, and she was very kind, and she fed him and looked after him, and didn't want any harm to come to him because the mafia boss was beating him. So she gave him shelter at this church that she ran, but the mafia boss wanted him back, and they weren't going to play around. So, and then in the middle you have the Kung Fu character, the monk, who can see the danger here, but he's talking to the boy and he's teaching him his own ways and philosophies. And then you have the bodyguard who's hired to kill the Kung Fu guy. He's like a hatchet man. I think he tries to throw an axe in his back, and David Carradine catches it, and he realises this guy's pretty good. So, David Carradine doesn't want violence, but what happens is the mafia boss says, because he finds out that he's got these dragon marks on his forearms, he realises, shit, this guy, it was a disciple of the Shaolin monks, the temple. He's actually passed all this initiation. This guy's a kung fu master, so you can't physically hurt this guy. He's too powerful. So what he does is he said my bodyguard here, because he was a big, like, burly Oriental guy that was also, learned martial arts. And he says the peasants, they think he's like a god, like they think he's untouchable, because he's just so strong and fierce and everything like that. But so do the people. The peasants think you're almost, well. What he says is, I'm gonna make it so that they think you're untouchable, and they think that you're almost like some supernatural god, where, and then they won't ever think that they can be like you. They won't actually listen to your message because you'll be untouchable in their own eyes as well. That's how he was going to deal with him. Whatever happens to the outcome of my guy against your guy, whoever wins, well, that's that, and there won't be any. You won't create a revolution because they're going to see you as almost so amazing that they can never touch that. I think that was the message, because what happened was, towards the end of that series, he chose what he did was he was in the house on his own, and then the bodyguard was going to assassinate him, and he was with his men. He was going to throw the axe in his back, and what David Carradine was doing was meditating, but he wasn't. He was prepared. He had a robe on and everything, and the guy threw it in his back, and it did went straight in his back, and he fell down, and the bodyguard goes, job done. This guy wasn't all that. Obviously, he's not. He's not he doesn't have supernatural powers, because I think the bodyguard actually thought maybe this guy does have supernatural powers, because he comes from the Shaolin Temple or whatever. And so they walk off, and then the door flies open, and then you've got David Carradine standing there, upright, walking very slowly, like and they get scared. They scram. The huge bodyguard just runs. This guy's like untouchable. He's almost he's immortal. You can't kill him, because he stands there and he goes and he pulls the axe out of his back and just throws it to the ground, and then continues to walk towards them, and they all scram. And when they're gone, the little boy runs up to him and says, "Hey, see, it's magic, it's magic." And then he falls to the ground, very wounded. He said, "No, it's not magic," and he's bleeding. And that was all act. He just had to manage the pain. And then the series ended there. I don't know. I think that was worth chucking that in there. I think it was, because even the little boy believed that he was magical and that he had supernatural powers that no one else did. And it wasn't. He was just a man. That's the thing. It was really hard for him to explain to the normies in that series, lived in the villages and everything, kind of like a cowboy setting. But it was really hard for him to explain to all of them that he was just a man like them. And the Chinese mafia, the Tong or whatever they called, they used that, and maybe he did in the end. The David Carradine character, maybe he realised that if he got too involved and started to do the Sermon on the Mount and preach his philosophy, he would anger the powers, and he would cause more. He would put the people's lives at risk. He would possibly cause more violence in doing that, and he couldn't protect everyone. So I don't know. I threw that in there because it makes me think of one possible understanding of Jesus' messages when he said, I'm the Son of God. He could have meant we're all sons of God. That's what he could have originally said, And then the powers wanted to make him elitist, saying that he's untouchable. You can't do what he did, because wasn't it? I don't know if it was the Gospel of Thomas or something. He said, "What I can do, you can do, and more." I think that was taken out. That says a lot, doesn't it? Because he was saying, listen, we all have this in us to overcome, evil, temptation, to overcome. Let's say he may have looked at civilization and the people at the time and realised maybe that they were operating on a very low level consciousness, what you call the lower drives, You know, you want to go to the chakra points, like they were operating on a very low animalistic level of sex survival. You know, passing on the DNA, the selfish gene, that kind of thing, um, which led to a lot of warring and violence, but also fear as well. And then fear makes people slaves because then the powers can continue to control them. And I think maybe, well, maybe being romantic, but if this guy was really benevolent man, he was saying that we really need to raise ourselves up, you know, like sounding new agey here, but vibrationally, and really, really think and see through our hearts. And then if we can do that, we'll be all right. We can very slowly, or maybe very rapidly, actually, maybe extremely rapidly, overcome the problems that we're facing, the suffering. I think maybe that it's the suffering he didn't like, and he really did see a solution, at least within himself. He maybe resolved that within himself. He had a period where he had his ego was dismantled and dissolved, or taken apart, which was maybe painful for him. But when it was finally resolved and restructured again, he was a different man. So the temptations and everything through the desert could symbolize that with the devil. It could have been, could have had a different message to the original one that we know. But yeah, so the thing is, maybe he thought that he could wake up the world. He could wake up everyone. Maybe that was partly a little bit of his downfall, the main reason of his downfall. He thought that he needed to just wake up everyone, and if we get enough, maybe he thought if we get enough people in numbers, then it will destroy the power structure. You know, if we get enough people from under the pyramid waking up, then the guys at the top won't no longer be able to control them. But that didn't happen by the looks of things. He was, they killed him basically, but they did it in public. So, you know, whether this is true or not, just think about this story. They actually turned the people he was trying to wake up against him, most of them anyway. And they killed him in public. They were that confident. They didn't even need to assassinate him. They actually made him carry the cross, the own object of his execution, of his death. The device. He made him carry it, and then most people was, oh, you think you're the Son of God, King of the Jews, whatever. He must have really suffered, and it must have been heartbreaking for him, and he must have realised, geez, I tried to put myself out there too much. These people here, my disciples, maybe I can count on my hand or something like that. Those are the people that I should have put my energy into. I shouldn't have tried to be so public and spread myself out too thin, So yeah, I just thought about that, and it does have a lot of relevance to the tribe. About what we realise now is obviously we can't shake everybody up, and that includes friends that we've known for years, members of our family. We've all gone through it one way or another, some more extreme than others, and it's not been easy. And thinking of the Jesus character, I looking at modern times now, what character could you compare that's alive now to Jesus? And as cheesy as it sounds, a little cheesy this whole video is, I would say that the closest person, or an actual Jesus character, a real life Jesus character, would be David Icke. Credit to him. I'm complimenting him here. I really do think he matches that character, whether he knows it or not, and whether he's thought it or not, it doesn't matter. Because certainly you have like religious public figures. I mean, obviously not the Pope, forget that. But like the Dalai Lama or whatever, I mean, he's not. He's too mainstream, probably swayed by the powers, and he's not. Um, you can think of lots of people, really. Bono, no, certainly not. The other bloke, the charity figure with the scraggly hair, forgot his name. Come to me in a minute. Mother Teresa, God knows, she was toxic. That was she was the opposite of what she represented herself to be. Um, yeah, Bob Geldof, charity guy. No, these guys are all fake. But David Icke is sincere, and it's interesting. Do you remember the 1990s interview we did with, is it Terry Wogan? And I think his message, I have to watch it again, but I think his message was, I'm a son of God, meaning we're all sons of God. And at that time, I think he went through that process where his ego was dissolved or completely dismantled, and he kind of didn't know who he was when he was going through this amazing spiritual awakening, very personal to him. And because I think he did say, he didn't know what day it was then, but he still made sense in his own way. What did he say on that interview? Something like, survey the world, ladies and gentlemen. The level of negativity is pouring off this planet, and we are seriously lacking love. And Terry Wogan said, "Oh, is that news to you?" And they all laughed. It was almost like he was doing a Sermon on the Mount, and the people were laughing at him, or they misunderstood him. Maybe when that interview was over, maybe probably the if people mistook it, if they didn't misunderstood what he said, well, the media would maybe pull the same trick they did thousands of years with another Jesus character. Saying he's the son of God, he thinks he's some untouchable, some angelic being better than being human. He's up himself. He's on an ego trip or something like that. He's got a messiah complex. He's crazy, But he never meant that. So there's connections there. There's parallels, to the original Jesus character with David Icke. I really do think. Yeah. And yeah, probably the traditional Jesus character that existed several thousand years ago. Back then, it would be harder or downright impossible for the world to know about him immediately. That is, probably the powers could know about him pretty quickly. Like if the powers thought this guy's radical, he's being a nuisance, he's shaking a few people up, potentially dangerous. What we need to let other people know about him. Even maybe people that are potentially their enemies, because they're kind of all the same, They don't want radical people rocking their power structure boat. So they'd probably send maybe someone on a boat or a horse or something to go to Egypt or whatever with a note, informing them of this character, this Jesus. So yeah, globally, maybe in a few years, the world or within the power structure could know about him, but the whole world probably wouldn't know about him maybe until, I don't know, 50 years or 100 years or more. Long, before we would have, been killed long before then. So, but unlike now, obviously, we have technology. So David Icke, was global real quick. Somebody like what's his name, Bill Cooper, who maybe it's likely that if Bill Cooper, if you haven't heard of him, look him up. I think he was basically murdered. He was a Christian, and he worked for military intelligence, and he had a lot of inside information and made books about it. Beyond a Pale Horse is one of them, but you've probably heard of him. But I mean, what he did was, I believe, was he thought, how am I going to play this? How am I going to do this? This was in the 90s. He did this when the internet wasn't that big at all. He posted loads of information, like information packs, probably to every country, I think, everywhere. And people would wake up in the morning and they just get this information, like New World Order, etc., etc. This Bill Cooper guy, he did it very quickly because of modern technology then because of shipping and stuff. He did that very rapidly. Everybody knew about him. So if he was to disappear, then it would be even more suspect. So he did that to, one, get the message out, two, protect himself. But back then you couldn't do that, could you? But David Icke has woken up the world with the internet, using the internet as a tool, and he's getting his books out there. So yeah, if something happened to him, that would be even that would be suspect too. But no, it just makes me think what we need to do, as a positive, ending this video in a positive message regarding the teachings of Jesus, is we need to put our energy into the tribe. Obviously, not the normies, sadly enough, because forgive them because they don't know what they do. They're never going to wake up. We need to learn to love each other. We need to build a bridge with that love and put our energy into the tribe. I'm talking about the wider tribe here. Anybody that's like-minded all over the world, and the internet is an amazing tool for this. It's got its downsides, but this is, it's got a lot of positives. So that's what we need to do. And this sounds new agey. I thought about this the other day actually. Letting go of fear. Don't do fear. It was David Icke that said, I don't do fear, mate. And so, I gave that game up years ago, because what does fear do? The obvious, it stops you from rational thinking. It makes you make bad decisions, and it stops your creativity. So yeah, on a message for the teachings of Jesus. Don't put your energy into those that can't be woken up. Focus on the tribe, and we really need to be coming from a heart-based consciousness. We really do. We're not going to succeed with fear. I'm stating the obvious, I know, but yeah, that's basically the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it, and I will say happy sanguine gnosis. I hope I said it right. Okay, guys, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.